The cake was vanilla with gold lettering. Congratulations! My name was written across the top. Friends from university stood near the windows. Music played softly from a speaker in the corner. My diploma rested on the table beside wrapped gifts. My father tapped his glass. The room quieted. I thought he would say something simple, something warm. Instead, he turned toward my younger sister. "I wish it was you holding that diploma," he said. Laughter flickered nervously in the room. "Dear, you are the only child who has ever truly made me proud." My mother nodded. No one looked at me. Have you ever felt erased in your own celebration? I stood there, smiling carefully, and when the music started again, I left. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't grab my coat dramatically. I simply stepped outside. The evening air was cool, faintly scented with cut grass and someone's distant barbecue. Laughter drifted through the open window behind me. I'm blending with music and clinking plates. Inside, they were still celebrating. Just not me. Have you ever walked away from a moment that was supposed to belong to you? I stood by my car for a minute, holding my keys but not unlocking the door. My reflection in the window looked calm, too calm. Growing up, I had learned to read rooms quickly, to anticipate where attention would land. It rarely landed on me. My sister was younger, brighter in personality, effortlessly charming. I'm the kind of child teachers described as a natural. My father loved that phrase. "She's gifted," he would say, pride warming his voice. When I brought home good grades, he would nod and say, "That's expected?" Expected, as if effort erased accomplishment. Have you ever noticed how praise and expectation can feel like opposites? In high school, I studied late at night while my sister rehearsed speeches and talent show routines in the living room. My parents attended every performance. They sat in the front row. My award ceremonies were smaller, academic, less exciting. "You're the responsible one," my mother used to say. Responsible doesn't sparkle. Responsible doesn't get standing ovations. Responsible quietly finishes what needs to be done. I built routines around that identity. Wake up early, study, help with chores, stay out of trouble, be self-sufficient. My sister built visibility. I built reliability. When I got into university on scholarship, my father told relatives, "She worked hard." When my sister won a regional competition, he said, "She's exceptional. Words matter." They shape the story of who belongs at the center. Have you ever realized you were being positioned as background in your own life? The graduation celebration had been my idea. Not for applause, just acknowledgement. A small gathering, close friends, family. I thought maybe this time would be different. I thought maybe the diploma on the table would be enough. But when my father lifted his glass and redirected the spotlight, something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. I unlocked my car and sat in the driver's seat. My phone buzzed with messages from classmates congratulating me. Outside, laughter rose again. No one had noticed I was gone. Not yet. And in that quiet space, I asked myself something I had avoided for years. How long would I keep auditioning for approval that never came? I drove without a destination at first. Streetlights blurred past my windshield like slow, tired fireflies. My hand stayed steady on the wheel, but my chest felt tight, like I'd swallowed something sharp. At a red light, I finally pulled over and turned my phone face down on the passenger seat. Silence filled the car. No music, no voices, just the soft tick of the cooling engine. Have you ever realized the quiet hurts less than the pretending? I sat there and replayed the moment again and again. My father's toast, like his smile, the way my sister's cheeks flushed like she'd been handed a crown, my mother nodding as if it was normal, and the way everyone else looked confused but not enough to intervene. No one said, "Wait, isn't this her graduation?" No one asked if I was okay. I wasn't even sure they knew what to do with discomfort. People like neat celebrations, easy stories. My pain didn't fit the event theme. After a while, I checked my phone. There were no calls. No, "Where did you go?" Just a text from my mother. Did you leave? That was it. Not, are you okay? Not, that was wrong. Just a mild inconvenience to the schedule. I typed, yes, I'm fine, then deleted it. I didn't want to keep feeding the illusion that I was fine. Instead, I wrote, yes, I needed air, and I left it at that. Early warning signs had always existed. They weren't dramatic. They were small, consistent, almost invisible, unless you were the one living inside them. Like the way my father introduced my sister first in every conversation. Like the way my mother asked what my sister wanted for dinner before she asked anyone else. Like the way family photos were arranged, my sister always centered, me slightly to the side like a backup option. Have you ever noticed how favoritism doesn't always shout? Sometimes it whispers. Even at my graduation, the signs had been there. My mother spent the afternoon adjusting my sister's hair, smoothing her dress, and telling her she looked beautiful. When I walked into the room in my simple graduation outfit, my father said, "You look fine, fine," a word that means nothing but tries to sound polite. During the party, my aunt hugged my sister and said, "Your turn will be next, sweetheart," as if my moment was just a preview for hers. My sister smiled and said, "I know." I had laughed lightly, like it didn't sting. Because what else do you do when you're trying to survive your own family? That night, sitting alone in my car, I admitted the truth. This wasn't a one-time slip, this was a pattern with a script. And I had been playing my assigned role for years, the responsible daughter, the quiet one, the one who would understand. Have you ever been told to understand so many times that your needs start feeling like a burden? I drove to my apartment and didn't turn on the lights. I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my graduation clothes, and stared at the floor. And then I opened my laptop. Not to scroll, not to distract myself, to plan. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew this. I was done begging for a seat at a table where my worth was always negotiable. And the next time my family spoke about pride, it wouldn't be in the same careless way, because I was about to make a decision they never expected from me. The next morning, my father posted photos from the party. Not of me holding my diploma. Oh, not of the cake with my name, but of my sister laughing beside him. The caption read, "Proud of my girls." Girls, plural. As if equality could be fixed with grammar. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Have you ever seen your reality edited into something more comfortable for others? Friends commented congratulations, heart emojis, applause icons. No one knew what had been said. No one knew I had stood there smiling while being quietly erased. And that was the moment the pattern became undeniable. It wasn't just that my sister was favored. It was that I was expected to absorb it gracefully. At brunch the following Sunday, my father joked about the toast. "You know I was just motivating your sister," he said lightly. "You're already doing fine." Fine again, as if accomplishment could be downgraded with a casual word. My sister looked uncomfortable, but she didn't speak. Not because she agreed. Says because she didn't know how to challenge the script either. Have you ever watched someone benefit from something they didn't create? The truth is, my sister wasn't cruel. She simply grew up in a spotlight she didn't have to fight for. And I grew up in its shadow. When I mentioned applying for a competitive fellowship program, my father said, "That's ambitious." When my sister mentioned taking a short course in something creative, he said, "You'll be brilliant." Ambition versus brilliance, effort versus talent. One required proving, the other assumed. That week, I stopped sharing updates. I stopped explaining my plans. I stopped volunteering information about interviews, applications, opportunities. Not to punish them, but to protect myself. Have you ever realized that overexposure makes you vulnerable to dismissal? If they couldn't celebrate me, they didn't need access to the process. I poured my energy into that fellowship application. Late nights, refined essays, recommendations secured quietly, no announcement, no countdown. And when the acceptance email arrived 2 months later, I read it alone at my kitchen table. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I felt something steadier than excitement: direction. For the first time, I wasn't chasing acknowledgement. I was building leverage because I understood something now. Like, you don't argue with someone who refuses to see you. You outgrow the room. And when my family eventually realized what I had done, it wouldn't be because I demanded attention. It would be because I no longer needed it. When the fellowship started, I didn't tell my parents right away. Not out of spite, out of self-preservation. I moved into a smaller apartment closer to the institute. Clean walls, one window overlooking a quiet street, a secondhand desk pressed against the corner. And it wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every morning, I woke before sunrise. Coffee, notes, focus, no commentary, no comparison, just work. Have you ever felt the relief of building something without anyone narrating it? The distance from my family wasn't loud. We still exchanged occasional messages. My mother would send recipes. My father would forward articles about rising careers, as if they were general advice. They never asked what I was building. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain. When I visited home, the conversations revolved around my sister's plans. Her internships, her ideas, her next big opportunity. I listened. I smiled. I no longer tried to redirect the spotlight. That was the shift. I stopped trying to prove I deserved space. I simply created my own. Have you ever noticed how freeing it is to drop the argument entirely? One evening during dinner, my father said, "You've been quiet lately." I looked at him steadily. "I've been busy." "With what?" he asked. "Work." He nodded, uninterested in details. And something inside me felt lighter, because I realized I didn't need him to ask follow-up questions. I didn't need him to understand the scale of what I was building. Understanding would come later. Or it wouldn't. Either way, I was moving forward. At the fellowship, my mentors noticed my discipline. They trusted me with responsibility. They asked my opinion in meetings, not because I demanded it, or because I earned it. And slowly, the identity I had been given at home began to dissolve. Not the responsible daughter, not the background one, a professional, a leader in progress, someone with direction. Have you ever outgrown a version of yourself that others still expect you to be? The graduation toast had hurt, but it had also clarified something. Approval was optional, growth wasn't. And as months passed, my family remained unaware of just how far I had stepped beyond their expectations, until the day they would finally see it. The email came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in a conference room with glass walls, reviewing a proposal with my team. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. When the meeting ended, I stepped into the hallway and finally checked the screen. 3 missed calls from my mother, 1 from my father, a message from my sister. Call home. Now. I stood there for a moment, staring at the words. Have you ever felt that quiet shift when something unspoken finally surfaces? I called my mother back. Her voice was tight. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked. "Tell you what?" I replied, calm. "Your fellowship, the award ceremony. Your photo is everywhere. Your uncle sent it to us." I leaned against the cool wall behind me. The ceremony had been small but significant. Industry leaders, media coverage, a feature highlighting emerging professionals. My name had been printed clearly under a photograph of me on stage, receiving recognition. I hadn't posted it. I hadn't announced it. I had simply attended. "You didn't ask," I said gently. Silence. My father's voice came on the line next. "We look foolish," he said. "Not we're proud, not we're sorry, just image. Have you ever noticed how some people care more about being surprised than about being supportive?" You never mentioned any of this," he added. "I mentioned work," I replied. "You weren't interested." The truth sat there between us, heavy, clear. My sister spoke quietly in the background. "Dad, just listen. For once, she wasn't the center. She was observing. I didn't hide anything, I continued. I just stopped reporting. My father exhaled sharply. You should have told us. We could have celebrated. The irony almost made me smile. Celebrated. Like my graduation? Notice I didn't say it. I didn't need to, because something had already shifted. This time the spotlight hadn't been redirected. It had simply existed, and they had missed it. Not because I wasn't worthy, because they weren't watching. After that call, something unexpected happened. My father didn't defend himself. He didn't minimize. He didn't pivot the conversation toward my sister. Instead, 2 days later, he showed up at my apartment. He stood in the doorway, looking slightly out of place against the neutral walls and tidy shelves. This is where you've been building everything, he said quietly. I nodded. No performance, no apology speech prepared, just presence. He stepped inside slowly, taking in the framed certificate on the wall, the stack of research files, the award plaque resting near my desk. You did all this without telling us, he said. I did it with or without you, I replied calmly. Have you ever spoken a sentence that closes an old wound instead of reopening it? He sat down at my small kitchen table, the same kind I once sat at studying late into the night in my childhood home. I thought pushing your sister would inspire you, he admitted. I didn't respond immediately, because that had always been the logic. Comparison as motivation, preference as fuel. You weren't pushing her, I said gently. You were sidelining me. He looked down at his hands. I didn't realize. That was the hardest part. Not cruelty, blindness. Have you ever been hurt more by what someone failed to see than by what they said? My father wasn't a villain. He was a man who equated visibility with value. And my sister had always been visible. I had been consistent, quiet, reliable, less dramatic. He cleared his throat. When I made that toast at your graduation, I thought you wouldn't mind. Wouldn't mind, as if my silence had been consent. I minded, I said, but I stopped explaining. He nodded slowly, and for the first time in years, I saw something unfamiliar in his expression. Regret. Not loud, not desperate, just real. You don't owe us updates, he said finally, but I hope you'll let us try to understand now. I studied him carefully. Trust doesn't rebuild in a single visit, but recognition is a start. Have you ever realized that healing doesn't require drama, only acknowledgement? Yet I'll think about it, I said. And this time, I meant it. A month later, my parents hosted another small gathering. Not for a holiday, not for my sister. For me. I almost didn't go. Old memories have a way of replaying themselves in familiar rooms. But I went, not for validation, for closure. The house looked the same, the dining table polished, the framed family photos still centered around my sister's brighter moments. But this time there was something different. On the wall near the hallway hung a new frame, my fellowship award photo, centered, not tucked to the side, centered. Have you ever seen a quiet correction made without announcement? My father tapped his glass again. The sound felt almost identical to graduation night. For a brief second, my chest tightened. But his words were different. I didn't understand my daughter's strength, he began. I confused loud with valuable. The room was silent. I'm proud of both my children, he continued. But tonight I want to recognize the discipline and resilience I overlooked. He didn't look at my sister when he said it. He looked at me. No comparison. No redirection. Just acknowledgement. My mother reached for my hand under the table. Her grip was hesitant, as if unsure she still had permission. Have you ever noticed how apologies can be imperfect but sincere? My sister stood and hugged me before anyone else did. I always knew you were strong, she whispered. I believed her, because strength doesn't compete. It coexists. The gathering wasn't grand, no press, no dramatic reveal, just conversation, questions about my work, genuine curiosity, and something else: balance. For years, I had tried to earn a version of pride that was conditional. Now I didn't need it, but receiving it didn't hurt. That night, as I drove home, I realized something important. The most stunning thing I did after walking out of my graduation wasn't winning awards. It wasn't earning recognition. It was this: I stopped performing for approval. I invested in myself. Quietly, relentlessly, without announcement. And when the results surfaced, they weren't arguments. They were facts. Have you ever noticed that growth becomes undeniable when it's no longer defensive? My father had once said my sister was the only child who had ever made him proud. Now he understood something different. Pride isn't about preference. It's about perspective. And perspective can change, not because someone shouts, but because someone rises. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever been overlooked in your own moment, remember this: you don't have to compete for a spotlight. You can build your own stage. And sometimes walking out quietly is the beginning of being seen clearly. This wasn't revenge, it was realignment. And it was just the beginning of my quiet strength. If you've ever felt unseen, share your experience below. What would you have done that night?